Very good morning to all of you. Today we are going to study about the salient features of the Indian Constitution. This is the third chapter of the textbook Indian Polity by M Laxmikanth. Friends, we are conducting 75 hours of the classroom program where we are trying to cover this book that in the 75 hours of the classroom. Also try to enable you to read the textbook and comprehend the textbook to understand the concepts. In the previous lectures, we have seen the chapter 1, that is historical background, and chapter 2, that making of the constitution. Friends, the Constituent Assembly on behalf of the people of India completed the task of the constitution making on 26th day of November 1949. The constitutions is a unique piece of enactment. It is the highest law of the land. The Constitution of India is unique in its content. There are the certain peculiar features which distinguishes it from some of the referential constitutions like the constitutions of the United States of America, that is the first written constitution, and the constitutions of the Britain. Indian Constitution possesses and incorporates certain characteristics such as the three-tier structure, enabling provisions like the emergency provisions. Simultaneously, it tries to promote the concept of the democracy, the political democracy through the fundamental rights, the social and economic democracy through the directive principles of state's policy, and the fundamental duties are there. Certain rights are justiciable, some rights are the non-justiciable. So it is a blend of the synthesis between the parliamentary sovereignty and the judicial supremacy. It also marked a blend of the synthesis, or you can call it the blend of the rigidity and the flexibility. So Indian Constitution, that it is very special even in its the character. So in today's class, we try to understand that what are the special characters, what are the unique character to the Constitution of India. So let us understand one by one and begin the class. So friends, first understand the two important concepts, that is the concept of the state and the concept of the government. In the modern political science term, whenever we say the state, that state is defined through the five important components. The five important components are: the first is that state, there should have a defined territory. In this territory live a group of peoples. Those peoples, through certain process of election, they elect the government. The government should be sovereign, and that government should have international recognitions. So these are the five elements which qualify the definition of the state in modern political science term. Whenever we say the sovereign government, what do you mean by the sovereign term? Sovereign matlab samprabhut. So sovereign means that government is the supreme, that in the domain of the policy making, the policy implementation, to design the policy for the welfare, development, and all those aspects. There should not be any institution, that is something called the supranational institution or the supranational institution, or even any superior institution which could pressurize the government, which could compel the government to follow certain provisions, to follow certain norms. So the government is supreme in the domain, in the sphere of that territory. So that kind of the government is called sovereign government. For example, India. The India is a sovereign state. Okay, the sovereign state मतलब इंडिया अपने पॉलिसी मेकिंग, अपने पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, पॉलिसी फ्रेमिंग, सो ऑल द डेवलपमेंट्स प्रोसेस के लिए इंडिया सुप्रीम अथॉरिटी है. नो इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक यूनाइटेड नेशंस, अमेरिका और एनी ऑफ द कंट्री यू कैन टेक फॉर एग्जांपल, इंडिया को प्रेशराइज नहीं कर सकता है, इंडिया को कंपेल नहीं कर सकता है, डिक्टेट नहीं कर सकता है कि वो अपने फॉरेन पॉलिसी या अपने प्रोग्राम पॉलिसी को किस तरह से डिजाइन करे. अमेरिका, Britain, and most of the countries in the modern democratic time, they are the sovereign government. So states का one of the character that government should be sovereign. Okay, one thing you should note in the textbook, आप small s से जब state लिखा हुआ देखें, that means it is province. Okay, that is normal state, राज्य. But when it is started with capital S, it is basically the nation state. ठीक है, राष्ट्र है ये, nation state. So you should not confuse. So state, these are the 5 characteristics. Now in order to run the state, there is a system that is called the government. So whenever we say the government के 3 elements होते हैं, and these are called 3 organs of the government. These are called the 3 organs of the government. These 3 organs of government are popularly referred to by a term that is called Trinity of the government. Okay, that is called Trinity of the government. So Trinity of the government includes the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. So legislature, executive and judiciary ये help करेगा in order to develop the further concept. Legislature is the organ which is primarily responsible for the law making. ठीक है, like Parliament of India. ठीक है, जिसको Union Legislature, State Legislature. So legislature is primarily responsible for law making, जो law बनाता है. Executive is primarily responsible for law implementation. Okay, the executive is responsible for the implementation of the policies, implementation of laws, and the judiciary, the judicial system, do the judicial review. Judicial review मतलब जो law made by the parliament, the legislature, any executive order, those are scrutinized, those are reviewed by the judiciary. Judiciary, there is a system of integrated and independent judiciary in case of India. There is a system that is at the top, there is a Supreme Court, followed by the High Court and followed by the subordinate court. This system of integrated system that implement both the state laws as well as the central laws. The Supreme Court is also called the guarantor of the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights because the fundamental rights are very integral for the fundamental development. They are very integral for overall development of the people. So sometimes due to certain state actions, due to certain arbitrary actions of the state, the fundamental rights of the people violates होते हैं. The fundamental rights of the people comes into the question. Then Supreme Court comes into the front and issue the writs to restore the fundamental rights. Fundamental right के restoration के लिए provision of writs है. And what are the writs? The writs basically 5 writs होते हैं. That is habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari and quo warranto. Subsequently, when we study the chapter on fundamental right, we will take up all these in details. So what the fact I am trying to dictate you should keep in mind that first, the concept of the state, they are the 5 criteria to qualify a state. The territory, people, government, sovereign government and international recognitions. In this system, there is a trinity of the government that is called 3 organs of the government. The 3 organs are basically functions on the division of powers. They have separate domain, but Indian constitution have some unique characters we will see. But the legislature is responsible for law making, executive is responsible for law implementation, and judiciary is responsible for judicial review to check, to evaluate whether the law enacted by the legislature or the executive orders are within the provisions of the constitution or not. One term you should also remember, there is a term frequently used that is called ultra vires. Okay, ultra vires. What do you mean by ultra vires? Whenever a law is made by the legislature, यदि वो constitutional provisions के बाहर है, then it is called ultra vires. मतलब constitutions के against है, that is called ultra vires. जब भी ultra vires होगा, then judiciary उसको क्या declare करेगा? Null and void. Whenever a law is found to be ultra vires by the judiciary, judiciary declares the law as null and void and that law will not be implemented. Okay, so this is the one aspect you should keep in mind. So while incorporating all the features, the Indian constitution is very unique in the character. Now, there is a concept that हमेशा याद रखें, whenever we say constitution, so generally we take the 2 referential model, that is the constitution of USA and the Constitution of the Britain. The USA Constitution, which is based on the doctrine of the judicial supremacy. What is the judicial supremacy? And the British Constitution is based on the principle of the parliamentary sovereignty. Means the parliament is a supreme, and parliament can amend the constitutions as an ordinary piece of legislation. मतलब पार्लियामेंट सोवरेन है, सुप्रीम है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को अमेंड कर सकता है अपने हिसाब से. So that is why in case of Britain, the British Constitution, it is called flexible constitutions. It is called the flexible constitution. But in United States, in order to amend the constitution, you need to have a special majority. हम लोग देखेंगे what are the different types of majority. Special majority, ordinary majority, simple majority. Okay, so different types of majority are required to do certain kinds of the job. American Constitution is based on judicial supremacy. British Constitution is based on the parliamentary sovereignty. American Constitution, it is called rigid constitutions, and the British Constitution is called flexible constitution. Okay, इस rigid means special majority से amend किया जा सकता है. Flexible का मतलब ordinary majority से amend किया जा सकता है. That is 50% plus 1 का concept. Now, Indian constitutions इन दोनों के बीच का synthesis है. It incorporates some features of the doctrine of the judicial supremacy. It also incorporates the features of the parliamentary sovereignty. So that is why it provided a checks and balance. One hand, ये पार्लियामेंट को एम्पावर करता है थ्रू द आर्टिकल ऑफ 368, दैट इज कॉल्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट पावर ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट, कि आप कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को अमेंड कर सकते हैं. साथ ही साथ द जुडिशरी को आर्टिकल 32 के थ्रू जुडिशियल रिव्यू को पावर देता है कि ओके, यू चेक इट दैट वेदर दैट इनैक्टमेंट और जो अमेंडमेंट है विद इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस और नॉट. ये अल्ट्रा वायर्स है क्या? अल्ट्रा वायर्स है, देन द जुडिशरी विल डिक्लेयर नल एंड वॉइड्स. सो एक तरह से ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट पावर प्रोवाइडेड करता है. ऑन द अनदर हैंड इट आल्सो प्रोवाइडेड फॉर जुडिशियल रिव्यू. ठीक है, सो लेट अस मूव फर्दर एंड यू कीप दीज फैक्ट्स इन द बैक ऑफ द माइंड. सो दोस्तों, वी आर गोइंग टू स्टडी अबाउट द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस एक लिविंग डॉक्यूमेंट है. इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के जो फाउंडिंग फादर्स हैं, दे वर हाईली विजनरी. दे इनकॉर्पोरेट द फीचर्स लाइक इनेबलिंग प्रोविजंस. Okay, कि how if the situation will change, how the constitution will adapt. So इसीलिए from the date of inception of the constitution has undergone a lot of changes. Okay, कुछ important changes आप ध्यान रखेंगे, like 42nd constitutional amendment act 1976. Then similarly the 44th constitutional amendment act 1978. ये दो important है. The 42nd, it is called mini constitution. Why mini constitution? Because the most of the provisions of the constitution gets altered. बहुत सारे constitutions को change कर दिए गए थे during the regime of Indira Gandhi. That is why it is called mini constitutions. कुछ arbitrary provisions भी add किए गए थे. Those arbitrary provisions were restored to the original values, or you can say more rational values, again in the 44th constitutional amendment. 44th constitutional में फिर से इसको restore किया गया. ठीक है, so similarly the important है, that is 42nd, this is known as mini constitution. 44th constitutional amendment act 1978, this is also another important amendments. Additionally, जितने भी आप याद रख सकते हैं, you should remember, but these are the frequently used. Okay, in 1976 के पहले there was a time, that in 1973, a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court come in the case of Kesavananda Bharati case. ठीक है, we will study the chapter on the amendment of constitutions. We will see the different cases. Okay, like the starting from the Golaknath case, Sankari Prasad case. Okay, then followed by the Golaknath case, then Kesavananda Bharati case, then Minerva Mills case, then IR Coelho case, where Supreme Court tried to define the concept of the doctrine of basic structure. So doctrine of basic structure के लिए the Kesavananda Bharati case 1973, it is the landmark piece of judgment. Doctrine of basic structure say that article 368, इसको आप याद रखेंगे, this is frequently used. It is the constituent power of the parliament. Okay, the constituent power of the parliament मतलब enable करता है parliament को कि आप provisions of constitution, major provisions of the constitution को आप change कर सकते हैं. ऑन द अनदर हैंड जुडिशियल पावर है सुप्रीम कोर्ट के पास कि वो अब चेक करें कि वेदर दोज अमेंडमेंट्स वर इन राइट स्पिरिट और नॉट, राइट प्रोविजंस और नॉट, विद इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल स्कीम, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस और नॉट. तो इन दोनों के बीच में बैलेंस है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. 1973, in the case of the Kesavananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court had smartly devised the concept of basic structure. Basic structure, there are certain fundamental features, fundamental provisions in constitution जिसको कि parliament alter नहीं कर सकता है. Okay, the parliament with the use of article 368, it cannot change those basic structures like fundamental rights, like federal model, like president, Supreme Court. So these are the features. Supreme Court, although not defined कि basic structure में कौन कौन से features आएंगे, rather it actually checks over the constituent powers of the parliament. So Kesavananda Bharati case, it is the important landmark judgment. In this case basic structure define किया गया था. So 2-3 points अभी आप ध्यान रखेंगे. Indian constitutions has undergone lot of the changes, and change is not for the flexibility, rather to adapt with the future changing circumstances. क्योंकि दोस्तों चेंज क्या है, एक इनएविटेबल कॉन्सेप्ट है. चेंज इज एन अनचेंजिंग रियलिटी. सो चेंज के साथ हमें अडेप्ट करना चाहिए, अदरवाइज वी वुड बी दैट साइडलाइंड. सो इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस इज अ लिविंग बिकॉज it has the character to adapt with the changing circumstances due to its enabling provisions. ठीक है, but change should not be arbitrary. That is why there is checks through judicial review. So 1973 the basic structure का concept define किया गया था. ठीक है, so while keeping this in mind, let's study some of the important features one by one. जो first features है, that is the lengthiest written constitution of the world. Friends, according to book, when you read that constitutions of the world is defined and classified into 2 categories, that is called written constitution and second is unwritten constitution. Written constitutions is the example of American constitution and unwritten constitution it's the example of British constitutions. ठीक है, so written and unwritten है. So Indian constitution falls into the category of written constitution. And Indian constitution is the world's lengthiest written constitution. It is called the elephantine structure of the Indian constitution. Elephantine structure. Why it is called elephantine structure? There are certain factors कि ये Indian constitution इतना lengthy क्यों हुआ? The Indian constitution originally text में कितने थे? There are 1 preamble. There is a 395 articles, and that is divided into 8 schedules. Now currently, according to 2013 data, that there is 1 preamble, there is a 465 articles, simultaneously there are total 12 schedules. So ये बहुत ही bulky documents है. Why? Number of factors responsible. British legacy, because structural part of constitution is taken from Government of India Act 1935, जो already एक bigger document था. Simultaneously, that Indian constitution is framed while going through the most of the known constitution of the world. According to estimate that more than 60 constitutions of the world को study करने के बाद Indian constitution बनाया गया है. So that is why it is a very big piece of legislation. Indian constitutions के बड़े होने के कुछ factors हैं, कुछ reasons हैं. What are the factors? इसको आप याद रखेंगे इस तरह से. The factors are the geographical factors. Number 2, historical factors. Number 3, the presence of the legal luminaries. Legal luminaries का मतलब the founding fathers, which are basically lawyer backgrounds के थे. And last, that it provided a single document for the administrative structure. ठीक है. The geographical factors का मतलब India is a very diverse country. The geographical area is very wider, and even the cosmopolitan natures of the people, multi-religious category of the people live here. So in order to provide a common document to governance, that it is a constitution of India. Historical factors, because 1935 acts जिसका most of the provisions Indian constitutions में लिया गया है, we will see the structural part is derived from the 1935 act. So historically ये भी bigger document था. That is why by default Indian constitutions को बड़ा होना ही था. लीगल लुमिनरीज का मतलब उस समय जो डोमिनेटिंग पर्सनालिटी थे दैट इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट मेकिंग प्रोसेस मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल्स आर द बैकग्राउंड बिलोंगिंग टू द लॉयर पॉलिटिशियंस. सो दैट इज वाई with their concepts, with the terminologies, that it becomes a lengthy document. The administrative structure, most of the world, there are the two types of system, federal system and provincial system. Federal systems are governed through some federal laws and provincial systems are governed through some other administrative system. But in India, this constitution provides a comprehensive and detailed apparatus for the governance of the entire country. एक सिंगल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्ट्रक्चर प्रोवाइड करता है थ्रू दिस सिंगल डॉक्यूमेंट. ठीक है. सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्ट्रक्चर डिटेल्ड है एंड इन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्ट्रक्चर के नॉट प्रिंसिपल रादर डिटेल्ड एक्सप्लेनेशंस के साथ बताया गया है. सो दैट इज व्हाई ऑफ कोर्स द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन शुड हैव एलिफेंटाइन स्ट्रक्चर. सो ज्योग्राफिकल फैक्टर, हिस्टोरिकल फैक्टर, सिंगल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, सिंगल डॉक्यूमेंट फॉर डिटेल्ड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्ट्रक्चर इन इंडिया. Then presence of the legal luminary, particularly from the lawyer politician's background. So these are the important factors responsible for big and the elephantine and being a lengthy document. So now let's move and understand the second feature, that is the drawn from the various sources. Friends, the Indian Constitution है, it is said and it is proudly said that world के जितने भी known constitutions थे उनको स्टडी करने के बाद बनाया गया. जितने भी पॉसिबल उसमें डॉक्यूमेंट्स थे उनको स्टडी करने के बाद बनाया गया है. सो इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस के लिए कभी क्रिटिसिज्म भी किया जाता है कि इट इज ए बोरोड पीस, नॉट ए ओरिजिनल वर्क. बट वी विल सी दैट इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस इज नॉट ओनली ए बोरोड वर्क, रादर उन्हीं प्रोविजंस को इनकॉर्पोरेट किया गया है जो इंडियन सर्कमस्टांसेस, इंडियन सिचुएशंस के लिए कंटेक्चुअल है, और उसको फिर से दैट विद द हेल्प ऑफ रैशनल इट इज जस्टिफाइड that it is required or not. Indian constitutions को जब भी हम लोग स्टडी करते हैं, that broadly we divided into three part: the structural part, the philosophical part and the political part majorly. So structural part जो है that primarily that is kind of a skeleton. It is borrowed from the Government of India Act 1935. ठीक है. The philosophical part जिसमें कि दो चीज हम लोग स्टडी करेंगे, दैट इज फंडामेंटल राइट्स प्लस द डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्टेट्स पॉलिसी. इन दोनों को कलेक्टिवली बोलते हैं कि इट प्रोवाइड द फिलॉसफी टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. सो फंडामेंटल राइट्स दैट इट इज द डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम, इट इज टेकन फ्रॉम यूएसए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दैट इज द बिल ऑफ राइट्स, एंड डीपीएसपी इट इज टेकन फ्रॉम आयरलैंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दैट इज आयरिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. ठीक है. Simultaneously, when we say the political part, that is political system, cabinet government, it is taken from the British Constitution. Apart from that, number of provisions like interstate trade and commerce, the federal system, emergency provision, these are taken from various other constitutions of the world. At the end of the lecture, I will give a trick to remember कि किन provisions को किन sources से derive किया गया है. So do not bother about that. Understand the concept. There is a Constitution of India. It has three parts, that is structural, philosophical and political. Structural, Government of India Act 1935. The philosophical, and that is the fundamental rights and DPSP. So the fundamental rights कहाँ से लिया गया है? It is USA Constitution. DPSP it is taken from Ireland Constitution. The political structure, cabinet government, parliamentary system, it is taken from what? The British Constitutions. ठीक है. रूल ऑफ लॉ. सो अभी हम लोग बढ़ते हैं एंड वी विल सी फर्दर व्हाट आर द फीचर्स आर. नाउ लेट्स स्टडी अबाउट थर्ड फीचर, दैट इज ब्लेंड ऑफ रिजिडिटी एंड फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी. फ्रेंड्स, पॉलिटिकल साइंस में रिजिडिटी एंड फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी का कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट होता है. रिजिडिटी का मतलब होता है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, इट इज अ डॉक्यूमेंट. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को अमेंड करने के लिए एक स्पेशल मशीनरी चाहिए. देयर शुड बी ए स्पेशल मैकेनिज्म. That special mechanism is generally called majority. ठीक है. That is called majority. So the rigid constitutions है जहां पर constitutions को amend करने के लिए special majority चाहिए. Special majority क्या होता है? दो concept याद रखेंगे. That is the 50% plus 1 of total membership. Second, the 2/3 of present and voting. ये दो criteria आप याद रखना. स्पेशल मेजोरिटी का मतलब जो टोटल मेंबर्स प्रेजेंट इन वोटिंग है उसका 2/3 एंड जो टोटल हाउस टोटल मेंबर्स ऑफ हाउस के हो उसका 50% प्लस 1 लोग उसके फेवर में वोट करने चाहिए, दैट इज कॉल्ड स्पेशल मेजोरिटी। फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी मीन्स ऑर्डिनरी मेजोरिटी से ये अमेंड किया जा सकता है। ऑर्डिनरी मेजोरिटी मतलब 50% प्लस 1 ऑफ द टोटल मेंबरशिप, इफ दे वोट इन फेवर ऑफ अमेंडमेंट उसको अमेंड किया जा सकता है। सो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी के लिए एग्जांपल इट इज द अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड फॉर फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इट इज द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। ब्रिटेन में पार्लियामेंट्री सोवरेनिटी है और अमेरिका में जुडिशियल सुप्रीमेसी है। अब हम लोग इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की बात करते हैं कि इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इट इज द ब्लेंड ऑफ द रिजिडिटी एंड द ब्लेंड ऑफ फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी। व्हाई? देयर कुछ प्रोविजंस ऐसे हैं जिसको हम लोग आर्टिकल 368 के थ्रू अमेंड कर सकते हैं। आर्टिकल 368 दो क्राइटेरिया प्रोवाइड करता है, एक तो स्पेशल मेजोरिटी है, सेकंड कुछ ऐसे प्रोविजंस हैं जिसके लिए स्पेशल मेजोरिटी प्लस कंसेंट ऑफ द स्टेट्स चाहिए। कंसेंट ऑफ द स्टेट्स मतलब जो 50% से ज्यादा स्टेट्स उसको असाइन करेंगे, वोट करेंगे तब, और स्पेशल मेजोरिटी का कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई होना चाहिए, तभी उन प्रोविजंस को हम लोग अमेंड कर सकते हैं। उसको हम लोग बोलते हैं आर्टिकल 368 के प्रोविजंस के विद इन। इसका मतलब आर्टिकल 368 दो क्राइटेरिया प्रोवाइड करता है, दैट इज एक बाय स्पेशल मेजोरिटी, बी बाय स्पेशल मेजोरिटी प्लस कंसेंट ऑफ द स्टेट्स। बट कुछ प्रोविजंस ऐसे हैं जिसको हम लोग ऑर्डिनरी लेजिस्लेशन से भी अमेंड किया जा सकता है, लाइक सैलरी, अलाउंसेस, इन सब चीजों को बढ़ाना हो, ठीक है, उसके लिए स्पेशल मेजोरिटी की जरूरत नहीं होती है, उसके लिए सिंपल मेजोरिटी चाहिए। सो वी विल सी ऑल प्रोविजंस वन बाय वन। सो अभी कॉन्सेप्ट को सिर्फ समझते चलते हैं। सो एक क्वेश्चन उठता है कि हाउ मेनी वेज इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कैन बी अमेंडेड। सो टोटल कितने वेज है? देयर आर 3 वेज। 2 वेज अंडर आर्टिकल 368 and another way that do not fall within article 368। ठीक है, आर्टिकल 368 याद हो रहा है, इट इज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट पावर ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट, बट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट पावर ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट थ्रू स्पेशल मेजोरिटी प्लस कंसेंट ऑफ द स्टेट। जो सिंपल मेजोरिटी से जो अमेंडमेंट किया जाता है वो आर्टिकल 368 के विद इन में नहीं आता है, इसको याद रखेंगे। बट इन टोटल देयर आर 3 वेज टू अमेंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। ठीक है, सो रिजिडिटी और फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी दोनों ही तरह के कैरेक्टर्स को इनकॉर्पोरेट करता है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। ठीक है, सो लेट्स कंक्लूड द टुडेज क्लास। टुडे वी हैव सीन द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ द स्टेट and within the state the concept of the government. The government, there are the 3 organs of the government, that is called the trinity of the state, that is legislature, executive and the judiciary. The peculiar features of the Indian constitution that it has the world lengthiest written constitution. It has the elephantine, the character. Elephantine structure is due to factors like geographical, historical, the single document for detailed administrative setup and the presence of the legal luminaries. Additionally, that it is a synthesis between the supremacy of the parliament and the judicial supremacy. That the Indian constitution is a very unique piece of legislation. In the part 2, that is the second part of this unit, we will see the more significant features of the constitution, that how these features make the Indian constitution as one of the best pieces of enactment, one of the best pieces of the constitution ever made. It is living because it has enabling as well as adaptive provisions. That it is functioning because that it is bound by the ethos of the democracy, the bound by ethos of the political values. So on the one hand it provides for the fundamental rights, on the other hand it provided for the fundamental duties and directives, principles of state's policy. All those we will take up in the subsequent parts. So this is all about the today's class. Thanks for the watching. Keep reading the textbook along with the videos. So tomorrow we will come up with the second part. So take care. Goodbye. Have a nice day.